Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us. This is News Channel Nebraska. My name's Eric McKay. Let's take a look at our top headlines today. One person flown to the hospital after a two-vehicle crash in northeast Nebraska. Police tell us it happened about 3:30 Wednesday afternoon at the intersection of South 13th Street and Tahazuka Road on the south end of Norfolk. A 34-year-old man from Palmer was driving northbound and tried to turn at the intersection when authorities say a southbound vehicle collided with him. The man from Palmer flown out of Norfolk to a hospital. The other driver eventually hospitalized as well. There's been no update on the extent of their injuries. Severe weather soaked residents in the Panhandle Wednesday evening. This footage isn't from Tropical Storm Debby. It's from Scotts Bluff, where torrential rains forced flash flood warnings Wednesday afternoon. Storm spotters reported standing water as deep as 10 inches in some spots around town. Residents said at one point the water had rushed all the way to the entrance of the Scottsbluff County Courthouse. That after almost 2 inches of rain reportedly fell over the course of an hour. The storms brought heavy winds as well. Gusts over 70 miles per hour reported south of Gearing, causing damage to tree lines and to some rural homes. As for Tropical Storm Debby, it's slamming back into the U.S. coast for the second time since it hit tropical storm status 4 days ago. It's slow moving and forecast to dump prolific amounts of rain and bring life-threatening flooding as it heads up the east coast. Brian Abel's in South Carolina, where Debby's power's already been seen.
Tropical Storm Debby targeting the U.S. coast once again overnight. The South Carolina governor comparing Debby to a 3-act play. The first act saw heavy rainfall as the storm moved from its Florida landfall Monday and parked along the coast, bringing bands of immense moisture. The second act is imminent as Debby curls back around, set to smack straight into South Carolina.
This is not nearly over. We're just in the second phase of this right now.
The third act, potential catastrophic flooding as waterways fill with stormwater.
The rain that falls will go into the rivers, and then also the rain that falls into North Carolina, which will be considerable, will take some time to work its way down into the state, and that's why we don't expect those rivers to crest probably until the middle of next week.
Major flooding is an issue that parts of Georgia are now facing after dams burst near Savannah. Residents elsewhere are seeing animals out of place, like this alligator swimming in a flooded Charleston backyard. And some are working through power problems.
Obviously, there's no power, so refrigeration's been a big issue, but we're trying to make it work.
Meanwhile, a family in Georgia thankful to be alive after a tree came crashing through their home.
It just was real scary, and I jumped up, and first thing I did was check on my kids.
Over 700 FEMA members and federal partners are now stationed in the southeast as a slow-moving storm could bring life-threatening hazards again. In Charleston, I'm Brian Abel.
Was a bit of an unlikely alliance at a farm near Omaha on Wednesday. EPA Deputy Administrator Janet McCabe joining Nebraska's Governor Jim Pillen for a news conference and tour of Jacobson's farm. This after the Department of Environment and Energy announced they'd been awarded a $307 million climate pollution reduction grant from the EPA. The grant looks to position Nebraska as a leader in sustainable agriculture. The governor says it'll have a positive impact on the economy, ag, and residents throughout the state, and does not believe there should be any concerns over where the funds come from.
This does nothing but turbocharge our opportunity to enhance measurement, enhance the practices, be a part of a program where we turbocharge and get it scaled all across.
The state says they expect the money to arrive sometime in mid-October. From that, they'll spend the months after it deciding how to hand it out. Gage County's board Wednesday heard a needs assessment on the potential for a new jail. The report by Prohaska and Associates of Omaha, the first step by the county under state jail standard regulations before any project could go forward. The architect for Prohaska and Associates says Gage County is not alone in facing jail capacity issues.
They're overcrowded now. It's a growing list. That's true in almost every county It's almost unmanageable in some counties. If you haven't already heard the horror stories, it's pretty bad. There's a lot of liability that the county takes on but due to overcrowding. There's also the cost. So transportation costs usually are more than you see because rarely do you see costs, the real cost attributed.
For several years, Gage County is contracted to hold prisoners in Washington County, Kansas, and in Lexington and in Washington County in Nebraska. When the local jail population is at capacity. The Gage County Jail was built in the 70s. It's rated for a capacity of 30 prisoners, but its functional capacity is only about 25. The field says if the county's considering a bond issue, a citizens committee would be utilized as a step in the process. Voters soundly rejected an $11 million bond for a new jail 15 years ago. But recently, Adams County opened a new 156-bed jail for about $30 million. But the sheriff's office part of that project was removed. Election in Grand Island is less than a week away, and local leaders say they're still answering questions ahead of the special election on the so-called Good Life District economic program. Leaders in Grand Island say they're hoping residents get informed on the topic and get out and vote. City officials say many people still have concerns.
Why the timing? That's a question that we hear a lot. The timing was driven by when the state notified us that they would be changing the sales tax rate for the state, and when that goes into effect. So the special election was the only election time frame that we could have before the state drops its sales tax rate on October 1st.
Good Life districts were authorized by the legislature last year. Grand Island just the third community in the state to try to get one authorized. Ballots can be mailed in or dropped off at the Hall County Election Commissioner's office. They have to be received by 5 p.m. on August 13th. Well, it's late summer. That can lead to a major disease that impacts part of Nebraska's wildlife. But the public can do its part to help stop the spread and give researchers an idea of how to stop it. Jake Bartecki has more.
Nebraska Game and Parks is asking for the public's help in reporting a recent illness in Nebraska's big game.
This time of year is when we see the epizootic hemorrhagic disease, or better known as EHD, and blue tongue virus emerge. And so that's the ones we're focused on right now, and hoping the public will help us out with reporting what they see.
Todd Nordine is Big Game Disease and Research Manager for Game and Parks and notes a number of diseases are impacting Nebraska's elk, deer, and pronghorn populations. However, none are bigger than EHD. In asking for the public's assistance, he says sick animals can be seen close to water due to running a fever and can lose a fear of humans, but outward signs are also noticeable.
Their head could be drooping, ears drooping, walking sporadically and abnormally.
With hunting season on the horizon, Nordine says EHD isn't transmittable to humans, but still recommends personal protective equipment when working with harvested meat. And while Game and Parks has detections across the state, one specific region has had more than others.
They've been a little bit more significant in the northeast part of the state, but often it can be attributed to drought conditions. So if there's areas of drought, where the water sources are minimal and the deer congregate at these areas, we often see higher infection rates.
Nordine says the public's help is crucial.
We do have staff around the state, but we're just not able to get out and about and as much, and public and their daily duties and recreational activities that they do. They're out there, and there's a lot of them that do that, and so they obviously see them a lot of times and a lot more often than we do.
In Lincoln, Jake Bartecki, News Channel, Nebraska.
And finally, nearly 24 veterans were honored this week in Valentine through the 4-H Quilts of Valor program. Casey Wannenberg takes us to an event that stitches together the lives of young quilters and esteemed veterans.
The reason I picked out this border is because it's camouflage and I like camouflage.
10-year-old Liam Johnson not only pieced together this quilt himself,
Just tried to get all the red, white, and blue right here.
but as part of the 4-H Quilts of Valor program in Cherry County, he'll have to get up in front of a crowd and explain why he's giving his quilt to a beloved veteran.
Uncle Tom, he was a tanker.
Liam's great-uncle, Tom Hoffman of Menzel, Nebraska, enlisted in the ROTC program in 1953.
When I was about 10 years old, about like this guy right here, and I just made up my mind that I wanted to become an Army officer.
Thanks to threads of determination and hard work, Tom quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a platoon leader in the armored infantry,
This outfit here.
then an executive officer, and eventually a company commander.
You gotta serve your country.
Tom led an elite group tasked with testing and evaluating the new M60 tank, but during one of the tests, an accident changed his life forever.
I got my head smashed and my neck broken in an Army tank, and that's the reason I can't hear very good.
Through this quilting project, Liam has sown a deeper understanding of his great-uncle's story and sacrifice, which project leader Rhonda Cherry says is a key aspect of the program.
The kids have to do an interview with the veterans, and that will be the story that they get up tonight and will read while they're presenting it. And you know, it's kind of funny, my granddaughter gave hers to her grandpa. That was her first quilt of valor, and he was in Vietnam, and it was kind of tough. And the family said they learned more from her interview with Grandpa than he'd ever talked about before.
Since the program launched in Cherry County 9 years ago, area 4-H'ers have honored veterans with around 130 quilts.
Every veteran that we ever try to give one to, every one of them says, I don't deserve this.
An honor that Tom is humbled by,
Very proud.
and that has inspired Liam to dream of serving our country as well.
I want to.
American pride stitched into every seam of this unique project. In Valentine, Casey Wannenberg, News Channel, Nebraska.
And you can stay up to date with the very latest by following us online. Head to newschannelnebraska.com and click on the News tab there. You can also follow us on X, like us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day. You're watching News Channel Nebraska.